Hi, thanks for joining Just Ask, Best Eggs video series where we ask experts important and sometimes embarrassing financial questions on behalf of our customers like you. I'm Sabrina DeVito, Chief Strategy Officer, and your host for this series. At Best Egg, we know life sometimes has some unexpected bumps that can cause some real financial setbacks for people. Many of us have personally experienced that and have had a reluctance in many cases to ask for help, particularly when it comes to finances. So we are here to ask the questions we wish we had asked, to understand the questions you might have, and to find experts to help you out during those unexpected bumpy times in your life that impact your finances. So today, I am so pleased to have back for a second time, Traci Kelly, who is the founder and a financial consultant from Kelly Greene Wealth. She is here today to talk with us a little bit more about budgeting, cash flow, and how to manage your money when your income suddenly drops. So Traci, happy to have you back with us today. And to get started, I'd love for you to just give a reminder to our viewers a little bit about yourself personally and your company.
Absolutely, and it's so great to be back, Sabrina. And let me say, I absolutely love the idea of questions that we wish we would have asked. I just think that's so important. So I have been in the financial industry some way or another over 20 years now, and I own my own small boutique firm. It's called Kelly Greene Wealth, and so I did work for the big investment companies, and was realizing that what we were taught to teach or taught to not teach our clients really was not always in their best interest. It was more in the best interest of what product did I have to sell. So by evolution of really wanting to do for people, I went out independent, and now I say, my client is the one that I am loyal to. So I believe in strategy first. And then anything that you may do is going to be so individualized and not one size fits all.
Awesome. Well, listen, in our last conversation, I thought, gave us some really great advice. But one of the things that you mentioned is that if someone experiences a sudden loss or drop in income, you had two suggestions. One was keep calm, and the next was to do a budget. And I really loved what you said about the best approach was to doing a budget. Can you just remind folks what you said specifically about what is the best approach to it?
Absolutely. And I still stand by those. Staying calm is so important. But the best approach to a budget, it kind of like exercise, it's the one that you will do and you will stick to. So, I have, and even folks like me, I really still like pen and paper, so if it's on a spiral notebook and you're keeping track, that's great. If it's an Excel spreadsheet and you're keeping track that way, there's also some amazing software out there that you don't have to spend an arm and a leg on, things like Mint. And then there are some really, really fancy ones. Whatever you love and you'll do is the best budget approach.
I love that advice. So I don't want to be too elementary here, but can you just give your opinion? So why does one do a budget, and what specifically would they include in a budget?
Sure. So the main reason to do a budget is really to get clarity of the whole picture. So when I say what's going on, I mean what's coming in and what's going out cash-wise. So, if I'm an employee and that's my only source of income, that's my cash flow in. But where then does that cash flow get allocated? And even in times where we're not, maybe hitting a financial bump in the road, I think a budget is still so important. The wealthiest of the wealthy believe it or not, do budgets. They know and they allocate where their cash is going. It's also great because it's going to identify habits or challenges or problems. So it will identify bad habits. Maybe you didn't realize that, wow, all those little trips to Target, when I was going for coffee filters, and how did that turn into $70? Well, that happens weekly, so it's identifying habits, it's identifying things that have slipped through the cracks. We talked about some expenses that might be on auto renewal that maybe you're not using. If you don't watch your Netflix, why are you paying for it every month? There's a reason companies absolutely love that monthly auto draft. Yes. Because it's constant revenue. So if you're not using it, that's money out the door. And also different, like I said, different problems. So where, how much is going out into taxes? How much is going out into car insurance, and should it be? So it's a way of saying, this is coming in, this is going out. And then the most important is what's left over, which is typically how we look at it. And I venture to say, let's try to look at it in the reverse. When I say what's left over, that's typically savings. So whatever there is left at the end of the day, I'll save that. But where I'd like to reverse that is, let's pay ourselves first. That's your savings. And then all of the expenses and whatever, goes out from there.
Yeah, interesting. So I have to laugh at your Target story. And I kid you not, this is a true story. My daughter, who is at University of Tennessee, called me last night and said, Mom, instead of going to Target, I've been ordering my groceries and my weekly bill has dropped by 2/3 because I'm not walking the aisles at Target and picking up this and that. So it is very, very true.
It is so true.
Yeah. So let's just say that someone is disciplined enough to sit down and do the exercise of what's coming in and what's going out. And as a result of that exercise, not only can they not pay themselves first, they realize that they don't have enough coming in to meet their financial obligations. So a couple of questions. I think you gave some good examples, which are, hey, through doing that, we'll identify ways to trim down your expenses, things like recurring payments for things maybe you're not using, maybe going out and trying to source less expensive insurance and things like that can reduce that. But let's assume that they've gone through that exercise and they still have a shortfall. And the question that we need some help with is like, where should I take that money from? If I have savings and retirement, or maybe I have equity in my home, like, where should I think about the best ways to pull from? Or should I? Should I just leave that stuff in place?
Well, I mean, what we're talking about is kind of damage control. When a life event happens and we have to look at where do we pull money, because maybe what's coming in is no longer coming in, or that amount is no longer coming in, whether it's short, long term, whatever it is. Having that, first of all, having a budget already in place is going to not only save you the work of doing it while you're in crisis mode, but it's going to allow you to stick with that calmness and make better decisions. And it's also going to be really helpful if you're using somebody else, whether it's somebody you trust to help you make that decision, somebody like myself. When somebody comes to me with a budget, then we can quickly assess. But even if you're not, it's crucial to do that first, so that when the damage control happens, now we look at, do we go into savings? When I say savings, it could be checking, it could be a traditional savings account, money market, basically like liquid cash, maybe it's even a coffee can out back. It could be a retirement plan, whether that's an IRA, a Roth IRA, a 401k, 403b, plain old investments, home equity line, credit card, loan. So I will say the answer to this is very individualized. It is not one size fits all. But often I am not a huge fan of going right into a retirement account like a 401k or an IRA. And the main reason is not just because that may be set aside for retirement and that's still important, because I'll say you can borrow for education, you can borrow for a home, but you cannot borrow for retirement. But the other thing is, if we're taking from a 401k or an IRA, there's taxes and there's penalties involved in that, depending on how you do that. So a complete withdrawal, you're going to pay a 10% penalty on top of whatever the federal income taxes are. That may be okay with you, but a lot of people don't know that right off the bat. Same thing with an IRA. And if you take a loan, there's different loan provisions and you have to pay that loan back, and there's going to be an interest rate on that, and you're still paying whatever your tax rate is at the moment. So that is not the first place I would go. And it's why I also caution that that is not the place that we put all of our money, because there's so many rules and stipulations attached to it. So from there, cash flow saving or cash savings is a good immediate, what do I have in my checking? What do I have in my savings? That's why I say 3 to 6 months. Living expenses in a checking account or a savings account is critical. But I also don't love the idea of expending all of your liquid assets, all of your cash, because cash is king. And I want to make sure that there's money in there, because we don't know how long it'll last. So that's a place I would go, but I would try not to use it all. Home equity lines are great. If you have one, usually they have a very low interest rate. That's a great place that you can use for bigger expenses. If you don't have one, credit cards for some are going to be an option, because again, we're doing damage control. But in the times where you are feeling healthy income, I encourage people to look into getting a home equity line of credit, because when you need one is the time that they probably won't give it to you.
Right. Interesting. Well, so if I'm hearing you correctly, the first place that you go is probably your cash saving. Mm-hmm. But your point is let's not totally deplete our cash savings. The next place would probably just be to try to balance that with some form of credit that's manageable. Mm-hmm. And then it would be more into investments in retirement if it right. really lasted that long. Is that
right? Absolutely. And the reason is efficiency. I'm always concerned with liquidity. So let's say there's 10,000 in a checking. Let's not use 9,500. But maybe we do use 8,000. And with credit, I hesitate to say put it all on credit cards, because we don't want those interest rates. But at the same time, if it saves you from expending all of your liquid cash, that's important. So the home equity line is really a great source of income.
Okay, excellent. So you and I talked a little bit about this concept of budget and cash flow. So can you kind of talk about what is a budget and what is cash flow, and what are kind of the differences and similarities there?
Sure. So a budget really is the organizational mechanism. So the budget is the operation that is really used to identify cash flow. So when I talk about cash flow, to me it is, you'll hear me say it a million times, cash flow is king. Because if you think about it, we always talk about this net worth. You hear that so-and-so's net worth is this. And in reality, I think that's a flawed thing to focus on. And the reason being, my net worth is, let's say my net worth is $1 million, but 950,000 of it is wrapped up in a beach home that's underwater in its mortgage, and I can barely pay the rent. and I don't have much money coming in, I'm not a very happy person. But if I'm focusing on cash flow, that's what's coming in. So if I have more cash flow coming in every month, every year than I do going out, then I'm probably pretty not only happy, but I'm also setting myself up for success now, middle term, and down the road. So the cash flow is what we're identifying and what's being transferred in and out of the budget, if that makes sense. The budget is what we use to make sure that we're making really good decisions with the cash flow.
Okay, so cash flow is like what's coming in and what is left after you go through the budgeting exercise. Is that fair? Is that a safe?
Right.
Okay.
So if we think about, almost like a water bottle, the water bottle could be the budget and the cash flow is what kind of goes in and out of it. And we always want to make sure that, there's enough if I have to take this outside and it's hot, which it is today, or I know when that I have to get more. It's see-through, so I can see where I'm at. It's kind of a simplistic analogy, but that's what a budget allows us to do. And it's really focusing on liquidity, what's left over at the end of the day after we've paid, whether it's a mortgage, rent, car insurance, student loans, anything like that. And then being able to say, okay, I'm saving this much, or I have full peace of mind that I can go out to dinner this weekend because I did my budget and I know what my cash flow is.
So are there some tips that you can offer in terms of how to maximize cash flow?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do a budget. But
Okay.
truthfully, no, but truthfully, because I think we all over or underestimate what it is that we spend. And by spending, I also mean, mortgage payments and things like that. So maximizing cash flow is really understanding what we have going on first. It's being mindful of spending, so the things that we all know, cutting expenses is going to maximize your cash flow, but being involved in your tax preparation is an important one. With recent tax reform, some of there's a little less wiggle room. But I say to my clients, the IRS provides us with a tax code that's like this big. And there are some provisions in there that we should be utilizing that we don't even know about. And a good CPA, a good tax planner will help you out with this, or even just some general advice, because what the IRS does not do is tell you all about the things that are going to help you. So, maybe it's utilizing LLCs, and a lot of people who are just, run of the mill. I'm an employee, my husband's an employee. We don't use that kind of stuff, but maybe you do. Maybe you have an investment property, or maybe you sell multi-level marketing on the side. Using an LLC is going to allow you to take additional deductions. That's a way to maximize cash flow. Watching for fees, unknown taxes. So, when you're booking something, all those little extras, little bits of fees and little bits of taxes that we don't think about that do add up. And so really it's the menial, boring work. But, if you're booking a hotel, are you booking one with resort fees? And are you even going to use the resort fees? So maybe you want to go somewhere else, because even though it looks like on paper, this hotel and this hotel are the same, these little hidden fees that get you at the end, those are things that just throughout the month, throughout the year, affect your cash flow.
Gotcha. So those are some really good tips. In closing, if you were to leave viewers of this with one piece of good advice around budgeting or cash flow, what would you want to leave them with?
First thing is do it. Just do it. Don't worry about what it looks like. Don't worry about, and when I say don't worry about what it looks like, I guess that's twofold. One, what does it look like? Does it look like a piece of paper to start with? Or, don't overthink it. Just start and do it. But also, don't worry about how scary it might look, how unhealthy it might look, because maybe today is that day where you're doing damage control, and really that's not a fun time to do a budget. But facing that fear, asking, starting to dig into those things, it's the first step toward coming out of it and toward the solution. So, nix the idea that I don't want to do it because I'm afraid of what it will look like, or because I'm already in such a position that what's the point of doing a budget? That to me that's thinking that will keep you in the damage control.
Yeah.
So facing the fear and just doing it, and knowing we've all been there at some point or other. So I think that's really the biggest thing, is just do it, and do one that you'll stick to, just because my best friend over here, and this is kind of a true story, she loves the fancy schmancy e-money, and it gives her alerts, and she really gets excited about it. If I did that, I would have abandoned it after about 2 weeks, because I'm not going to put that much time and effort into it on the daily. So whatever works for you is correct.
Oh, that's great advice. And I love the idea of, you can only be empowered and take control if you do it. So, don't stay in the damage control, like, regardless of what it looks like, take control of the situation. So
yeah, and ask for help if you're not sure, and I always say ask a few sources maybe, because we don't always know where to go to get information, but asking for help and being okay, that's part of being empowered, I think, because money, again, we're so like close to the vest. I don't want to talk about it. That's why I love what you opened up with, which is, the questions we wished that we would have asked.
Yeah.
So important, because if you're thinking it, I guarantee you 10 other people are thinking it.
Absolutely. And probably have experienced it. So, why not learn from other people, for sure. Okay. Well, with that, we're going to wrap this edition of Just Ask. And I really, Traci, appreciate you joining us again today. And thanks for the good tips and advice. We're going to continue this series in the coming weeks, and we're going to bring more guests to answer questions and help you get help and get your finances back on track. If you have questions or an area that you're financially struggling with and would like to tackle it, us to tackle that in an upcoming video, just let us know by reaching out to us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So until then, thank you again, Traci. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sabrina.
You bet. Stay safe, be healthy, and have an excellent week.